Business Honoring Spirituality. And this morning we had an amazing speaker come to us and a webinar.
Great morning here at BHS, and I intend to be back soon.
Hello, virtual networkers. Welcome to BHS. My name's Anthony Pritchard, and I'll be your meeting planner and MC for today. We've got a great guest who will give a presentation about being curious in business. Before that, I'd just like to introduce BHS to those of you who have not attended before and start us out with a brief prayer. BHS is the longest running business networking group in Denver, and we invite speakers to give inspirational presentations on personal and professional development for your business. And now that we're all working from home, we moved our platform from in-person to virtual. And so I invite you to join us directly following this 25-minute presentation for some interactive networking with all of our members. And we usually have 20 to 40 members show up, so you never know who you'll be matched up with. And now I would like to give us a prayer to start us out, but I'd also like to invite anyone out there who is feeling compelled to join this broadcast to be the prayer practitioner. I'm doing so many other meeting planning things, and we usually do have someone who just specializes in giving the prayer. And so I want to invite anyone of any faith or any background to just join us if you feel so called to be the prayer practitioner for our group, because me doing everything just gets you get a different taste with a different person. So I'll just invite you to close your eyes if you feel so compelled. And I'll just give up my great gratitude for the opportunity for running a business and for creating this container for us to share together and to share personal and professional development practices. I just call on the faith of God's divine presence everywhere, being my cornerstone for everything that I do, and that I can be open to this opportunity, revealing new ways for me to grow and develop my business. I ask for all of our opportunities to grow and flourish in our many businesses, and I ask to be mindful to the needs of others. Amen. All right, so that's our brief prayer, and BHS is this is our mission statement. We empower business professionals to be successful through education, connection, and spiritual principles. And today our guest is Andre Van Hall, who is known as the Curiosity Instigator. He's an executive consultant and was in the hospitality industry when he suddenly lost sight and lost his eyesight. And he was forced to make some major changes. And with the support of those around him, he embraced this change. And now he brings this message to us. And so I just want to invite Andre onto the program. Welcome, Andre.
Well, thank you very much, Anthony. Delighted to be on this morning with you and the group.
Well, I'm glad that you chose to join us. Not in person, but we can certainly see you and your person. from your home office.
Yes.
And so I'll just let you take it away.
Well, terrific. Thank you very much. And look forward to spending the next 20 minutes together discussing the importance of being curious in the face of change. And as I try here to application window, and I don't see my application. Of course, we rehearsed this. And let me just go to my keynote presentation. Okay. Well, Anthony, I'm having difficulty here. I'm going to try it one more time.
Okay. Yeah, there's should be that.
Yeah, what I did is I started the presentation and I didn't like that, so I needed to close it up and start it again. And now it's working.
Okay.
Sorry for that. So it's change is all around us, right? And change takes different kinds of shape. I'm not here this morning to discuss that happy change of, yay, I got married, and yay, I got a new car, okay, whatever. Those changes we know how to deal with. It's a difficult change that I want to talk about. And for me, my change began on August 15 of 2011. Okay, I want you to think back to 2011. It was just 9 years, a couple of months ago, and I was literally on top of the mountains, both physically and metaphorically. I'm an avid cyclist, and I had ridden ahead of my group. And as I waited at the top of the mountain for my friends, I contemplated on life. And the Lord had been very, very good to me. And I had a dream job as CEO of the Denver Athletic Club. My kids were doing great in school. I had a great relationship with my wife, and everything hitting on all cylinders. But little did I know that some massive changes were going through me starting at that moment. So the next morning on August 16th, as I woke up, and 4:45 in the morning, as I usually did, and I shuffled to the bathroom and looked in the mirror, and I'm going like, yeah, the beard needs a trimming and forehead is still growing. But as I looked straight in the mirror, I couldn't see below my chest. And that scared me to no end, because you see, 2 years before that, in 2009, I similarly woke up and something was off with my eyesight. And many tests later, they decided I had had a transient ischemic attack or a mini stroke of my optic nerve, that I had lost the vision on the bottom part of my left eye, and to go on with my life. So I did, but I did not know that over the next 2 weeks, I would become completely blind in my left eye. So in 2011, as I stood in front of the mirror, you can understand why I was so scared, because even though the doctors had assured me that the chances of my right eye being affected were billions to one, well, this was my 1,000,000,000 to 1 morning. And so I rushed to see my optometrist as soon as she opened up, did some tests, and dilated me and said, Andre, I don't like what I'm seeing. So she says, you need to go see an ophthalmologist. So more dilation and test. Oh, you need to go see a retina doctor. More dilation and test. Oh, my goodness, you need to go and see an optic nerve doctor. More dilation and tests. 9:15 at night, I found myself on the gurney at Littleton Hospital with an intravenous in my arm, trying to bring down the inflammation in my eye, trying to see if they could salvage some of my eyesight. But the diagnosis was in. I would be blind in 2 weeks. So here's where I want to pause for a moment, and I want to ask you, what is the change that is happening in your life? Think about it. I know that it's right now so easy to say, well, it's COVID. But COVID may be the catalyst, but what are the underlying difficult things that are happening in your life? And it could be a personal relationship issue. Could be a health issue, could be a job issue. So for the next 20 minutes, I'd like you to think about that difficult change that is happening in your life. Now you can imagine, for me, it was devastating. I'm lying on that gurney and I'm crying, and I'm going through some difficult emotions, right? And the problem is that our brain, when confronted with change, it wants to compare it to something that it has already experienced and say, okay, how did I handle it then? How should I handle it now? But many times we don't have something to compare it with. And then what happens is our brains start to swirl down and down and down into a cesspool of toxic emotions. That's when the devil takes over, right? That is when we start getting angry, we're getting desperate, we get back at people around us, okay? And what I want to show to you today is that with curiosity, you open up your eyesight to all the possibilities that the Lord brings into our lives, okay? So the thing is, we have to realize that change in itself is not our enemy, right? Change is going to happen. I'm going to go blind. You're going to deal with the problem that you're dealing with. Now, if you can stop that change from happening, of course, put all your energy behind stopping it, changing it, and bringing it around. But so many times we spend all this negative energy without too much success, because all it does is brings us deeper and deeper into despair and anger. So then what is the answer, right? And the thing is, yes, the one thing you can control is your attitude, right? And but the thing is, I don't know how to come in this morning, and I'm assuming you're on your first cup of coffee right now, and I don't know how to wake up and shake up your attitude. And attitude is something that is an opinion. If I tell you you got a poor attitude, you don't know what I'm talking about if you're one of my team members. But if I tell you you're usually late, you do not volunteer to do new assignments, you don't get along with your peers, I start to give you tangible things that you can do to be better regarded in my eyes as a team player. Okay. So attitude is an opinion, but curiosity is something that you can attack head on. And a curious disposition reduces the stress brought on by change. Okay. Now, if we don't become curious, the problem is we start swirling down into that cesspool of these toxic emotions of fear and uncertainty and anger and so on and so forth, okay? And there is such a thing as the American Institute on Stress. And Heidi Hanna is the executive director of the Institute on Stress. And what she says is a curious disposition, okay, reduces the stress, the stress caused by change, okay? So why not become curious? Why, instead of swirling down into the despair of the change that is happening in your life, don't you become curious and open your eyes to the possibilities that exist out there? Now, for me, as I was the CEO of the Denver Athletic Club when all of this was going on, and one of the past presidents of the club, a guy by the name of Jack Barker, who had been the CEO of Mountain States Employers Council, now called Employers Council, was in my office as I showed up to work the next morning. He says, Andre, I heard about your diagnosis, and I went and did some research. And here in Colorado, we're lucky to have one of the very few places that will help you transition into blindness. And it's called the Colorado Center for the Blind. Now, I had not thought about transitioning into blindness. I just thought, well, I've got 2 weeks before I'm blind, and I'm going to just wait and pray and see what happens. What about you? Are you doing the same thing with the change that is happening, the one I asked you to think about? Are you just waiting for it to take over your life? Or are you willing to go, become curious about alternatives, and attack it head on? And what Jack did for me by bringing this information to me and telling me that I needed to transition into blindness, he very slightly brought some light into the darkness. And he also told me that there was a store in Littleton called Beyond Sight that sold all of the toys for the blind. Okay, and now I have a watch that talks.
Customize watch face. 8:15 a.m. and 36 seconds. 8:15 a.m. and 37
And
seconds.
those days, you know, this is an Apple Watch. Those days in 2011, that was the Stone Age, and a lot of these devices did not exist. But one of the things that they had a lot of was canes. And so I grabbed one of the canes, and I started walking around the store with a cane in front of me and sweeping it from side to side. And the clerk comes over and says, "Wow, you must be new at this." And I'm going like, "Well, yes, I am. And how do you know that?" He says, "Well, you see, we use our canes to find obstacles. And you holding the cane in front of you when you walk, and if you're walking really fast and that cane finds an obstacle, it's going to change the pitch of your voice rather suddenly." And it dawned on me that something as simple as using a cane was absolutely not so simple. That was a whole learning curve to transitioning into blindness. So I asked him, "So how do I learn to use a cane?" Because the Colorado Center for the Blind wanted me to be there for 8 hours a day for 6 months. And I couldn't do that. I had a full-time job. And he says, "Well, you will go to the Division of Vocational Rehabilitation, where a caseworker will..." Wait a minute, caseworker for me? I'm a CEO. I'm a Rotarian. You know, I don't need a caseworker. He says, "Well," it says, "you know, if you want to learn to use a cane, the caseworker will give you a trainer that will show you how to use a cane." And in Bible study, just a few months before, we had been discussing one very important word. And that word was humility. And the definition that I liked the best was the ability to accept help. And boy, was I not a humble man. I did not know how to accept help. How about you? That change that is happening in your life, is that something you're facing all alone and you feel that you're the only one that can handle it? Or are you open to the possibility that other people are stretching out their hands to help you out? My wife, my children, my coworkers, my executive team wrote a letter to the board of directors telling them that anything that Andre can't do, we will pick up for him. And I got angry. What do you mean the things that I can't do? I can do everything. Of course I can do everything. But no, I can't, right? Going to be blind. There's a lot of things that I will not be able to do. So be humble. Let the people around you help you and understand they don't do it to diminish you. They do it to help you. So take the big humility pill and let people help you and understand that the world is not for up to you to change by yourself. You can do it with the help of your friends. So then the next question is, are you open to new ideas? And one of the things you don't know is that I grew up in Buenos Aires in Argentina, and I went to an all-boy British boarding school. So I know what you're thinking. Oh, Andre went to a school of magic. And it was anything but a school of magic. For me, it was a school of misery. Because you see, it was an all-boys school, and our sports were rugby, cricket, and soccer. And I literally sucked at all of them. You see, I was the smallest one in my class. If you're looking for me, there I am. And I'm sitting on the Buenos Aires phone book. There's 12 million people I'm sitting on there, right? And I was a nerd. And so I was brutally and relentlessly bullied at school. Until one day, with tears in my eyes, I went to my father and says, "Dad, you've got to change my school." He says, "Andy," yes, in those days I used to be Andy. He says, "Andy, I can change your school, but the baggage that makes up who you are is going to go with you to the next school. The one who needs to change is you." Man, was I angry at him at that moment. And one of the regrets that I have in my life that I never got to thank him for that great advice, because he passed away shortly afterwards. So if you got to thank somebody, thank them today, because you never know about tomorrow. What about you? Do you think that the world is your responsibility? Are you curious about who or what needs to change? And do you realize that sometimes the one who needs to change is you? I could have changed small things. I don't have to compromise on the big things. Okay, to be cool, that's by school, you had to smoke. And I didn't want to smoke, and I never did. But all the other kids had slip-on shoes. I still had tie-on shoes. You know, my uniform was always impeccable, and my hair was just the way it's supposed to be cut, and the others were starting to sport longer hair and pushing the boundaries. And sometimes just getting yourself out of your comfort zone and starting to push the boundaries of what you're comfortable with will help you transition into a new you and show you that there are different things that you can do. So that brings me to my next question. Do you know what are the 10 most powerful two-letter words in the English language? I'm going to say it again. 10 most powerful two-letter words in the English language. And they are, if it is to be, it is up to me. Yes, if it is to be, it is up to me. If you want to bring change into your life, it truly is up to you to do so. It's up to you to become curious about alternatives. Now, as I mentioned earlier, we use our canes to find obstacles, right? And that is how I learned to use my cane. But as I started getting engaged in the blind community, because I am the first blind man I ever got to know well. I had no blind friends. I knew nothing about blindness. Okay. And my other blind friends that had guide dogs were getting places a lot faster than I was. And they're trying to convince me to get a guide dog. And I'm like, why do I want a guide dog? My cane is great. I don't have to feed it. It doesn't poop. And it's just awesome. I can just fold it and put it away. But you see, what I started to realize is that indeed we use our canes to find obstacles. But we use our dogs to anticipate them, to avoid them. So what are you? How do you go through life? You go through life like a cane, always finding the obstacles when it gets too difficult, turn around and go back home? Or do you use it like a dog that anticipates things? So open up your eyes to the possibilities of the tools that may exist out there. I resisted and I pushed back on the joy of getting a guide dog. Now, this is my guide, Pelham, and Pelham recently passed away, and they got a very nasty and aggressive cancer. And he was taken away from me in a very premature way. He came from Guide Dogs for the Blind out of San Rafael, California. It cost them an average of $100,000 to train one of these magnificent animals. And they give them to us completely free of charge. So I said that Pelham was my Lexus. He took me everywhere I needed to go with 4-paw drive. He is the most magnificent chick magnet you can imagine and the most heartwarming companion. I miss Pelham a lot. But open up your eyes to the possibilities, okay, of things that can come to life and things that you're pushing back on and resisting. And I'm going to move on to the next thing, which is listening. Okay, I was working at a hotel, and my general manager came to me and said, Andre, the brakes on the van are squealing. Can you have them fixed, please? And I said, oh, sure. How do you find out? Oh, Danny, the driver told me. So I saw Danny, and I'm like, well, Danny, I said, thank you for letting us know. I sent the van to get fixed. But how come you told the boss and not me? He says, Andre, he asked. How about you? Are you going around asking people, trying to become curious about alternatives? Or are you stuck in doing things the way that you always have done them? Okay. I'm going to skip these slides in the interest of time. And I'm going to bring us to one of my heroes, and that is Pope Francis. And why is he one of my heroes? It's because he's trying to bring change into a 2,000-year-old organization. And one of the things that he is talking about is don't judge, assess. How about you? Are you judging or are you assessing? You see, I judge blindness. I'm one of the first blind men I've ever got to know. So I judge this using my prejudices and preconceived ideas. How about you? Are you using your prejudices and preconceived ideas? Now, I'd like to brag that I was in Rome and got to be blessed by the Pope. And I know that he has forgiven all my sins, past and even the future ones. But reality says that I know where I'm going to end up, so I don't hold up too much hope for that. So, you know, when the iPhone got introduced, BlackBerry was king of the mountain, and they judged it instead of assessing it, right? And they lost that battle. So we need to realize that change in itself, change is inevitable, but personal growth is optional. Okay, so let's understand that change is inevitable, but personal growth is optional. Which brings me to the next point, and that is blind spots. So I was an avid cyclist, and my friend Tim said, Andre, why don't you and I do the 100-mile Elephant Rock bike ride on a tandem? And I pushed back and resisted. But eventually I said, fine, okay, I want to get out of the couch and start getting active again. So I bought the tandem, and I said, Tim, let's go riding. So Tim came, and I got on the bike. I said, let's go. And he says, no, wait a minute. Okay, you got a lot of gears on this bike. Okay, how are we going to communicate? Shut up already. Let's get on the bike and we'll figure it out. You see, Tim is a very deliberate manager. I'm more intuitive. When you have to take the back seat in life, do you still want to be in charge? Now, if I want to bring my management style to Tim, is he coming back for a second ride? No, of course not, right? So take the back seat and be humble, be curious, listen. Now, Tim and I got on the bike path, and I'm like, Tim, you're in the wrong gear. You're killing me. Now, Tim is a 23-time Boston Marathon runner, awesome athlete. And he says, what do you mean the wrong gear? This is the perfect gear. Yes, it was the perfect gear for him. Okay. But when you're in charge, do you want to impress your team and show them how great you are? Or are you willing to be curious and say, Andre, what about this gear? But be open to me challenging you back and saying, that's okay, but what about that gear? So as you go through your change in your life, are you being curious to cooperate with a team? Now, I do every year ride the Rockies. And one of the things that you need to be able to do that with is to have trust and to trust your team members. And here we are coming down the mountain at 62 miles an hour. Look how we pass the other bicycle like it's pedaling backwards. It takes confidence and trust. Do you trust your team? Do you have confidence that you can do the things that you want to do together? And that is the thing that we need to do. And you see, everything was starting to go very well. Tim and I got the right cadence with right confidence in each other. We were passing every bicycle on the bike path until we got to the stupid short climb of Chatfield Dam. And we argued all the way to the top. The Lord is going to try you in many ways. And just as your life is going smooth and you're passing every bicycle on the bike path, there's going to be a stupid short climb to challenge you. And Tim and I argued all the way to the top. No, this gear, no, that gear. You see, there's always going to be that kind of thing. For me, it was losing my job after I went blind. And then I got a nasty cancer. And I metastasized. I needed surgeries and infusions and treatments. It was a difficult 3 years. The Lord was trying me. But I have to realize that it was not the universe that was aligning against me. The universe is way too busy being the universe. Okay? It doesn't have time to single me out. And it's the same for you. I know that change is difficult and that sometimes what we see in front of us is Mount Everest instead of that stupid short climb. But my challenge to you is, can you see the tunnel you can bore through? Can you see your way around the mountain or your way over the mountain? And that is how you need to open up your eyes to these possibilities. But too many times, this is how we ride our bicycles, right? And if that bicycle were Congress and the Republicans are the captains and the Democrats are the stokers, they're both patriots. And they both believe that their way is the way to save the country. But if they're not curious about each other, if they're not willing to listen, and if they're not humble, they're not taking that bike anywhere. So be humble, listen, be curious, and open up your eyes to the possibilities of the things that you can do. Now, I had to leave behind my hobby of photography. This is my daughter, Annika. And it breaks my heart that I can no longer see my pictures. I can no longer take pictures. What about you? Do you have a heartbreak about what you can't do? You see, I had the enormous joy of rafting the entire Grand Canyon, and I will never be able to experience through my eyes the glory of God in a place like this. But do I want to dwell in the negativity of what I can't do? Or do I want to rejoice in the glory of having climbed the 14er and getting to the top of it with my Rotary Club, trying to rename this peak Rotary Peak? Or do I want to rejoice in the fact that I can ride the Rockies, and I do it with Team Samaritan House from Catholic Charities. And in the last 7 years, we have raised $1 million for the homeless in Denver. So stop feeling sorry about yourself for the things that you can't do, and rejoice in the fact that I can ski. Yes, I have to do it with a guide and a blocker, but guess what? I'm out there doing it. So stop thinking about what you can't do and think about what you can. So I wrote a book called The Curiosity of Change. It's available on Amazon. Okay. And what I want to leave you with, okay, is that people ask me what helped me get through and handle this difficult change. And I say, yes, it was a curiosity, okay, but also not taking myself very seriously, okay, and understanding that a sense of humor is seriously important to handle change in your life. So how about yourself? Do you take yourself too seriously? You see, as I lay on that gurney, crying, feeling sorry for myself and thinking, oh my goodness, will I ever be able to see the faces of my wife, of my children again? What about my job? And I kept feeling oh so sorry for myself. All of a sudden, this thought came into my mind, and I'm going like, oh my goodness, I'm so dilated right now from all the tests that I went through today to bring me to this point, that I'm surprised that they brought me to the emergency room instead of the baby delivery room because of all the dilation. And all of a sudden I laughed out loud, and the nurse came running over and says, oh, anything wrong? I says, nothing is wrong. It says, just sort of a really bad joke. He says, well, out with it. It's late in my shift. I need to hear a good joke. I said, okay, you asked for it. The teacher walked into the classroom and says, so students, what body part grows 10 times when stimulated? And little Susie jumps up and says, I can't believe you're asking that of us. We're in 5th grade after all. She says, Susie, sit down. He says, Tommy, you got your hand up. What is the answer? And Tommy says, well, it is the pupil when stimulated by drugs. He says, excellent. Susie, stand up. I'm going to tell you 3 things. Number 1, you obviously didn't do your homework. Number 2, you got a very dirty little mind. And number 3, when you're all grown up, you're going to be very disappointed. And we laughed. And all of a sudden she says, oh my God, you got to tell this to the other nurses. And we're having a great time in the emergency room telling jokes. And for the briefest of moments, the darkness dissipated. I had chosen to laugh instead of letting the devil take me down and down into that cesspool of toxic emotions. So how about you? Okay, are you willing to let curiosity help you handle the change? Allow yourself to feel vulnerable. Open yourself up to new things, because you have an option. You can curse the darkness, or you can light the candle. What is your choice? Thank you.
Andre, great presentation. I think I can see all 20 of us clapping behind our cameras right now. That's such an inspirational story, and I'm glad that you were able to share it with us today.
Well, thank you. Thank you for allowing me. Sorry I went 4 minutes over.
Oh, that's just fine. That's just fine. We'll have plenty of time for networking. So I'll say goodbye to you, because I know that you're going to be helping us to moderate that networking component. And for those of you who are just tuning in for the first time and haven't joined us for interactive networking, I'll let you know that the members who do join say that it's the most valuable part. If you got something out of this, you can expect to get exponentially more out of joining us in our Zoom meeting. And we have a few comments here from people. who are also grateful. Allison D'Amico and Pete G. Also, so I guess we'll see them in the Zoom room. And so I'll say goodbye.
Goodbye, and I'll see you in Zoom.
Okay, bye. Well, what a great guest, Andre Van Hall. He's a Denver pioneer in helping business leaders adapt to change with curiosity. And so I'm grateful for that. We've got upcoming speakers in Wellness and Scrum, and Stacy Peterson on why 2020 was your best year ever. This Saturday, Zach will be hosting our annual food drive. So put some things from your cupboard in your trunk or the back seat of your car and drive up so that they can load up the food drive at the Lakewood Action Center. So now we've got our Zoom meeting. I invite you to join us. The link is here, and I'm going to put it in the comments section right now so that you can just click on it and go. You can just click on this link, and it should bring you straight into our Zoom room. Now, if you haven't used Zoom before, you can just go to the website zoom.us, and that will bring you to a page where you can enter this number. And our Zoom number is 464-679-369. All right, well, that's where I'm going to go right now myself. So I hope to see you there. Thanks again for joining us, and I hope to see you in 2 weeks.